Hi, everyone. It is fabulous to be back here answering your questions on Ask the Egg Whisperer. So thank you for joining me tonight. Let's get started. I'm going to start off with Mary's question. Mary's 41 years old from California. And her question is, hi, Dr. Aimee. Well, this is not a question. Gosh, I wish I found you online sooner. You're amazing. I'm 41 years old with stage 4 endometriosis. Last excision, I can say that word, I promise you. Last excision surgery was end of 2020. Doctor also removed one ovary and both fallopian tubes, and I still have one ovary in my uterus. I have 4 frozen embryos grades 4BB, 2 4cc, 3cc, all day 6. I'm doing my first FET. I ovulated through Lupron and then the birth control pill, so starting cycle over. The doctor doubled the birth control pill for 5 days and then went to 1 pill a day and increased Lupron, hoping I don't ovulate through again. How many embryos would you suggest I ask the doctor to implant at once? Any supplements, foods, or tips you recommend for successful FET with history of severe endometriosis? Mary, these are great questions. Here's what I would suggest that you do first. Look, we know your diagnosis. You're 41 years old and you have severe endometriosis. It sounds like you had excision surgery at the end of 2020, and that is fabulous. But the question is, was there any adenomyosis present? Is it possible that you could benefit from Lupron? So I would talk to your doctor and ask those questions. And if it looks like potentially there could have been any adenomyosis, you might benefit from maybe taking 1 or 2 months of Lupron. Lupron, it is no party, so definitely read my Lupron survival guide before you take it. And you can go to my website, draimee.org, and Draimee is my rap name. That was my chair. I didn't toot, I promise. That was the arm of my chair making a sound there. But go to draimee.org and put in Lupron Survival Guide, and you'll read all about my tips. So if you're a patient of mine, I would say, look, maybe let's consider 1 or 2 months of Lupron. And given that you're 41 and all the things that you've done, I know this is a hard question to answer, but ask this question of your doctor and say, would these embryos do better in a surrogate or with me? Have we prepared me enough so that the answer is just as good? Okay, that's like the patty cake. Okay, and the reason why I say that is our eggs at 41 are not a renewable resource. Unlike guys, right? I wish women could ejaculate eggs because that would be awesome. I'd be like, here's your cup, come flow and go and just come on in. But unfortunately, we have to go through all the things that you go through to make embryos. And we don't know if any of these embryos have the golden egg in there or not, but we want to assume that they do. With the quality of the embryos that you have, I would feel very comfortable transferring all of them. A 4BB, 2 4cc's, and a 3cc, I would say the likelihood of a singleton with that number of embryos would be, I would estimate, well, I'll just say this. Talk to your doctor about what that estimate is. It's super important to know what your implantation rate is per embryo, and then you can be guided. But I would feel very comfortable transferring all of them at once, but I'd certainly want to make sure that I've prepared you very, very well. So the answer is yes, I would transfer them all at once. The supplements, foods, or tips, I would say if you have endometriosis, think what am I trying to say? I'm going to use my arms and be like strong. And what I mean by that is endometriosis loves estrogen. And the less estrogen or fat on your bones, the better, the lower amount of inflammation in your body. So think about, lifting weights, being active. The supplements that I would have you take are N-acetylcysteine. That's one. I do actually have my patients continue CoQ10 until transfer day. And then also take letrozole every single day until you start progesterone. That's another suggestion. And last but not least, consider the ERA test if that's something that your doctor agrees that you should do as well. Okay, Mary? Whew, you guys have been out of practice, but I'm back. It'll get easier. Here, this next question is from Anne. She's 31 and she's from Norway. Anne says, hi, Dr. Aimee. I have the following hormone values: AMH8, FSH6, estrogen 12. I've tried 3 times first round. No eggs fertilized. Second time, Menopur, eggs fertilized, but no pregnancy with those 4 eggs. Third time, no eggs fertilized, not mature enough. So what do you think for my next try? My doctor wants to put me on letrozole, Gonalef, Menopur plus double trigger shot, Gonapectyl, Ovidril. Thanks in advance for the answer. Have a nice day, Anne. Anne, I think your doctor's been watching the podcast. I don't know how you can watch a podcast, but you know what I mean. So that's exactly what I would do. But first, I would ask, have we done enough genetic testing? Is this related to a chromosome issue or the fact that you might have Fragile X? So do those tests, do a carrier screen, do a chromosome analysis, and see if there's something in your DNA that could potentially explain what is going on. But this protocol is what I would use if you are a patient here as well. I'd have you on all the egg quality supplements, and you guys all know what that special sauce is. But I definitely agree with that type of approach for you, because that's exactly what I would do too. This next question comes from Nicole. She's 38 from Philadelphia. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm 38 years old. I have DOR. I've had 2 successful egg retrievals that have yielded a total of 3 eggs, which all fertilized and were frozen day 3. My doctor prefers day 3 transfers or freezes in DOR patients, and I followed his advice. Now I feel unsettled. I wasn't able to do PGTA testing on my embryos, and I'm worried that they might not be good quality. Do you have any advice or information about thawing day 3 embryos, growing them to day 5 for biopsy and refreezing? It seems like a lot for embryos to go through, but I feel like there are so many benefits to testing. And Nicole, you're right. When you bank embryos, it is so nice to know what you have waiting for you. But this is the thing. Embryo testing is not the purple crystal ball. What I meant to say is it is not the perfect crystal ball, and I really wish it could be. I really wish that the technology was 100% accurate and tells us everything about the embryos. But the thing is this, your doctor has an experience with cases just like yours in their lab, and he's kind of setting you up for the success that he feels that he can give you. And I'm saying he, I'm just assuming it's a he here. He or she. Maybe you said he. I don't know. But anyways, it doesn't really matter right now. But what I'm trying to say is find out from your doctor what their experience is with culturing to day 5, biopsy, and refreezing. Vitrification is a process that is very stable. We've been doing it for a really long time. So I don't worry when an embryo is vitrified twice. I do worry, however, sometimes when an embryo has a double biopsy, for example, and it doesn't sound like you're doing that at all. Double biopsy is something if an embryo is lower quality could potentially damage an embryo. But in this case, I would say maybe do an ERA test first, then potentially, are you ready for this? Thaw your embryos in a way so that you can biopsy the day before your transfer and then the next morning get results back and still be within your implantation window. That takes a lot of coordination. It does. But a lot of clinics are able to do that for their patients, and maybe your doctor would consider that for you. So I'm not sure how to call it. Call it a biopsy, a thaw, a biopsy on day 5 with a day 6 culture and a transfer. So that's something that I would be talking to you about if you are here as my patient, and that's something that you can potentially talk to your doctor as well about. And then you can also potentially do one more cycle, thaw all the embryos on day 3, take them out to day 5, and biopsy them all together. Or last but not least, I know so many options, do another cycle of IVF, take those embryos out to day 5, and that might be a really good test to figure out whether your eggs are strong enough to make it to day 5. So that's something else you can do. Okay, this next question comes from Jill. Jill is from upstate New York and is 36 years old. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Thanks for taking the time to answer my question. I'm 36, 3 unsuccessful IVFs under my belt. Diagnosis is endometriosis. My BCL6 H score 3.4, FSH 9, estrogen usually around 60, LH4, Aimee's 3.7. Last cycle, long Lupron. I only got 8 mature eggs, 0 blasts. Sperm stats, DNA fragmentation, excellent. We added Zymot anyways because we're desperate. It still did not help. We will also PGS test, of course, this month. I'm having a laparoscopy, my 3rd, to treat the endometriosis. The doctor is using the Da Vinci, and I really have confidence in him to get it all. The problem is I have no embryos. So I'm headed to the 4th egg retrieval right after surgery. We are willing to do one last cycle. My doctors are recommending something I've never heard of. Cetrotide starting after ovulation in the cycle before stims. Please tell me everything you know about this. Thanks. Jill, literally, you guys know this. Maybe you don't know. I actually don't read these questions before I come on here. I've been seeing patients since 6 in the morning. My first patient was at 6. She might be listening right now, so she might be chiming in and saying, that's right, Aimee saw me at 6. So as I was reading this, what your doctor's suggesting is literally exactly what I would suggest for you too. So you can start cetrotide in the luteal phase, but I would even go a step beyond that, and maybe your doctor is thinking of that, is start stimulation too. There are some studies to suggest that women over the age of 37, you might get better quality embryos in the luteal phase. So talk to your doctor about a luteal phase stimulation. The only downside of doing that is you can't convert to an IUI or a fresh transfer in that kind of scenario because the uterus isn't ready. The other thing is your hormone levels aren't going to be as helpful as a guide for you in terms of telling you what's going on with your eggs as they're growing, because typically we're used to following estrogen levels over time. But when you do a luteal phase fart, that was funny to me, a lot, very funny. So when you do a luteal phase start, what happens there is your estrogen level is already high because you've ovulated. So tell your doctor, thumbs up from me. We heart him. We love his creativity. And I would say yes to that. Remember all my egg quality supplements, take N-acetylcysteine. I have some things that are a little outside the box that I've been doing lately. I will announce it very soon when I feel really confident about it, but I think that there are some other things. You can message me and I'll tell you what that is. Just direct message me and say, hi, I'm Jill from upstate New York. You were going to say something, but you didn't. My worry is that when I say something out loud, sometimes everyone starts doing it. Not everyone, you know what I mean. People start thinking that it might work for them, and I don't want to create a trend when it's too early to create that trend out there for everybody. But coming soon, okay? This next question is from Rosie. She's 39 from Arizona. Help! Help is on the way, Rosie. Here we go. I'm 39, antagonist protocol. Birth control pills, 3 weeks, Gonalef, Menopur, Ganirelix, trigger shot, 250 micrograms of Avidril. Out of 13 eggs retrieved, all good size, only 3 were mature. What happened? What can I personally do better next time? What's a better protocol? I'm confused and devastated. So Rosie, here's the deal. You got my sparkle checklist, you got my embryo diamonds, you got it all. So this is the thing. I don't know what happened after your 3 eggs were mature. What happened? We're all sitting here and we're waiting. What happened, Rosie? Let's just assume that you got no blastocysts. So let's figure out that the IVF challenge here is low maturity rate. So the questions I would ask, what were the size of the follicles at the time of the trigger? What was the time of the trigger relative to the egg retrieval? I feel like I have a piece of hair that's like right here, just right down here. But no, it's the wrinkle that I have right in my forehead because I haven't done Botox because of COVID. I'm just kidding, just because I haven't had time, but I clearly need it. So next time I won't point that out. But anyways, moving on, as far as having a low egg maturity rate, the way to deal with that is what I kind of already suggested. Look at the dose of the trigger shot that you are on. Ask your doctor if you would benefit from a dual trigger combination of HCG plus Lupron. Ask your doctor if you would benefit from perhaps doing your trigger shot at 37 hours. It's a little risky, makes us feel a little frisky. We're sitting at the edge of our seat. We're like, please don't ovulate, please don't ovulate. But a lot of times, doing a 37-hour trigger in a case like yours could be beneficial. So ask your doctor if that is an option for you. Sometimes add a little something, something. And what I mean by that, maybe a little bit of gonal to your trigger to see if maybe that could help. I mean, there's so many ways of making what I call a momlet. And sometimes we unfortunately try all these things and still it doesn't work. One of the things that I've noticed, as if I invented it, I did not invent this, what I've noticed here, is that endometriosis can cause a lower egg maturity rate. So ask your doctor if it's possible you have endometriosis. And then talk to your doctor about the size of the follicles at the time of the trigger and see if they should push you one more day. And that kind of looks like a diamond, you know. I have medical students that rotate through here sometimes, and I talk about ovaries a lot, and I say the follicles are like chocolate chips in a chocolate chip cookie. And she's like, that makes me feel really hungry. So now I should probably say they look like glimmering stars in the sky, or like beautiful diamonds. I don't know where they would be, on a pave ring. Who knows? Okay. This next question comes from Andrea. She's 34 from New York. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm 34 in my first cycle with 2 follicles. My AMH is 0.2. My low AMH is possibly due to endometriosis. See? Exactly what I said with Rosie. That's what endometriosis can do too. Darn it, endometriosis. I'm negative for antithyroid, anti-ovarian, anti-adrenal antibodies, Fragile X, no family history, clean karyotype. Haven't done the Receptiva DX test yet, but I have a history of painful periods. My uterus is on the right side instead of centered and tilted to the right. I'm planning to freeze embryos rather than doing a fresh transfer, but on the day of my trigger shot, my lining was only 6 millimeters. What can cause a thin lining and what can be done to thicken it? Thank you for all you do. Okay, so there actually are some studies to suggest that endometriosis can actually cause a thin lining. Another diagnosis is scarring in the uterus, and that's kind of mysterious to me because I never really thought that there was a connection until recently. I actually found a study to suggest that there is. So I was surprised by that. So what I would say, I mean, depending on, what your doctor thinks always, is avoid a biopsy like the Receptiva DX test. It requires a biopsy of the lining of your uterus. And my concern is that if your lining is already thin, doing a biopsy could make it worse. And I would say the risk of uterine scarring from an endometrial biopsy is really low. It's about 1%, maybe 2%. But if you already have a thin lining, I try and avoid the biopsy. It sounds like you have symptoms of endometriosis and you have that already, so I'm not sure you really need the Receptiva DX test to confirm it. I like that test to confirm when I can't see endometriosis, or it's a known diagnosis and I'm just kind of trying to figure out how I should treat it, based on the situation. But in your case, it feels like probably doing that is not the best idea. So here are my thoughts. Do a very gentle saline sonogram or hysteroscopy to see if there's any scar tissue in the uterus. I would say look at your body size, stress levels, and activity levels. And some of the things that I've done, and again, totally outside the box, but there's the usual stuff, right? Estrogen pills, estrogen patches, estrogen shots. But one thing that I have patients do, and I've had them do it successfully, is something called Hbot. So you go into an oxygen chamber, and it's kind of like, those oxygen bars at the airports. Sometimes I've actually have seen them not that long ago, maybe like a year. It's been a long time since I've been in an airport, but I have seen one recently in the last, I'll say 5 years. But there might be a benefit to oxygen therapy, potentially. Again, not FDA approved for this indication. Talk to your doctor first to see if they think I'm totally nuts by making the suggestion for you first. And if they think I'm nuts, I'm okay with that. You can skip it. And then also supplements like vitamin E and L-arginine. And I also have my patients consider taking aspirin. So those are some things that might help. And I would ask your doctor if they think that you might have adenomyosis. I would ask them if they think that you have a uterine anomaly, for example, a unicornuate uterus, and see if that is somehow playing a role in your situation. Maybe you have some sort of uterine anomaly, and maybe doing a pelvic MRI could be helpful in diagnosing it. But it sounds like a laparoscopy would not be so outside the realm of what you should be considering, and a hysteroscopy too. So those are just other ways of looking at the anatomy of your uterus and making a more accurate diagnosis to help guide you. Thank you for that question, Andrea. This next question comes from Yoya from Houston. 39 years old, Dr. Aimee, I love your sense of humor. Thank you, Yoya. I'm 39, AMH is 0.6 after estrogen and HGH priming. Following your advice, my LH is 1.4, FSH2, estradiol 23, TSH 1.1, my AFC 11. When my follicles were 20, 17, 13, 10, 12, and 16, day 10 of stims, I was told to stim that night and next morning again and trigger at 11 p.m. 35 hours later, my retrieval, 6 eggs retrieved, 3 mature, 1 fertilized fair, 1 transferred fresh, day 2, 6 cells, and failed. Ugh. The day of my transfer, my progesterone was 40 and estrogen was 900. I was doing 2 estrase, 2 progesterone pill, 1 cc of PIO daily. My midway labs, estradiol 1250, progesterone 43, TSH 2.9. Do you think that the high P4 and TSH affected implantation? The progesterone suppositories give me terrible cramps, probably because of cervical irritation. Is there a way to do a fresh or frozen transfer without progesterone suppositories or just using PIO? Why every time I do progesterone suppositories, my TSH spikes? When my egg maturity had improved, the egg retrieval was at 36 hours. What would you advise for my next try in terms of protocol and transfer meds and dosages? Thanks. Okay, Yoya, real quick, first thing I think about, have you done enough genetic testing? Chromosome analysis, carrier screen, and I would even throw in a sperm DNA fragmentation test. What was the sperm quality on the day of the egg retrieval? I'm going to think that you had fabulous sparkling eggs, and I don't want to assume that this is all egg quality related. However, it could be because of your age. I still would suggest looking at sperm very, very closely. When I look at your follicles, I say to myself, you had a 2017, 13, and a 16. The day before stim, I would have expected, look at that, what's up? 3 mature eggs from that. So I would say your egg maturity rate is not far off from what I would have expected from this roll up of eggs. So next time, maybe wait 1 more day. Go in the day of the trigger. Don't just assume your eggs are going to be sparkling the way you were hoping them to be. And of course, I want them to be sparkling always. but go in the day of the trigger shot and maybe go in the next day and push them 2 more days from there to get more mature eggs. I would say that if you had waited 2 more days from the day you triggered, you probably would have had at least 1, maybe 2 more mature eggs. I'm just guessing. And then the other thing is, yes, a 36-hour trigger could have given you more mature eggs. Could, with air quotes, I'm not sure, for sure. But obviously, these are all learning experiences that are really annoying to have because they involve you doing surgery and taking all these drugs and then going through this whole experience. But at the end of the day, I really hope and pray that this will help you get you the baby you deserve one day. As far as the progesterone levels and your thyroid, I do not think that they played a role in the lack of implantation that you had. Your TSH was only 2.9. I don't get too fired up about that. I think you can repeat your TSH, see where you're at, add thyroid medication, see a thyroid doctor. But, it's very typical and normal for when you're taking hormones, especially like HCG, estrogen, progesterone, your TSH will rise up a little bit. But I think a 2.9 versus 2.4 or 1.9 shouldn't make a big difference given what you shared, and that was that you transferred a day 3 embryo that had 6 cells. That embryo probably had a lower likelihood of implanting just because of the quality of that embryo. So if I were to say this probably didn't work out the way you wanted it to because the embryo quality was a little bit on the low side. That's probably related to your age and nothing that was in your control. You did the very best that you could possibly do. My recommendation for another cycle as far as a protocol would probably be to consider doing, let's see here, with your Aimee of 0.6, see what your follicle count is. If your follicle count is truly 11, I would say, maybe, so many to choose from. I can't tell what you did, but, maybe have your doctor have you go in maybe one day a little bit earlier. You can start the antagonist perhaps by day 4 to prevent that one egg from trying to get in the way of making a trigger shot decision. And so then by doing that, you can push things out maybe 2 days without your doc being afraid of triggering you at 36 hours or pushing you 2 more days. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. This next question comes from Andrea. Andrea says, "Hi, Dr. Aimee. Thank you for giving us all hope. I had my first egg retrieval today with Dr. Wang. I'm 34 with an AMH of 0.2. Haven't yet figured out the cause. No Fragile X, clear chromosome analysis, clear anti-adrenal, anti-thyroid, anti-ovarian antibodies, no family history. I've never been pregnant. I triggered with 2 follicles, but my 36-hour retrieval found out 1 follicle had already ovulated. I hate it when that happens. My protocol was gonal F150. I mean, it didn't even happen to one of my patients, and I'm just reading this and I get so upset. My protocol was gonal F150 units, days 1 through 11, 10 units low dose HCG, 7 through 11, 10 units of Onatrip, 9 through 11, ganirelix days 8 through 12. Triggered on day 12 with Novarel 5000, and I just found my one egg had parthenogenesis activation and can't be fertilized. Am I part lizard? How would you change my protocol? I'm already taking CoQ10, Tru Niagen, prenatal, vitamin D, NEC, fish oil, acai berry, vitamin C, and E. Thank you so much." Okay, Andrea, here's the thing. Our issue is you just haven't found the good egg yet. Here's what I would suggest you do. I don't know what your FSH is, but find out what your day 3 FSH estradiol are. I would just keep trying. Someone posted on their Instagram, it was really cute. It was like, keep on stimming, keep on stimming. I would say, don't give up. This might be a situation where we might want to consider a duo stimulation where you stim with the first cycle, retrieve, start meds again right after retrieval, and then go right into stimulation and retrieve again. I had an embryologist say to me the other day, "Weren't you just here 2 weeks ago with this patient?" I'm like, yes, you notice. Exactly right. And I actually got the better blastocyst in the second half than the first half. So I was like, thumbs up, AMH around the same as yours. So see what your doctor thinks about that for you. As far as protocol, I would do a mini IVF protocol. I like to use, and I'm showing the number 5, Femara for 5 days, overlapping gonal for Menopur for about 3 days. I think that what you did was just fine, but I feel like you can make it a little bit simpler. I would start Omnitrope right now, twice a week, and then add it every other day during your stim, and start the ganirelix a little bit sooner. One thing that I do, I actually take a syringe. Let's pretend like this is the ganirelix right here. Voila, ganirelix. This is not ganirelix. This is my pen that I lose all the time. And I'm always like, where's my pen? Where's my pen? Where's my pen? And I'm holding it in my hand. Where's my pen? So what I do is I take the ganirelix and I take a pen and I actually put a little mark on it, and that's half the ganirelix, and I tell my patient I want you to take half today and half tomorrow. So rather than taking a full ganirelix too early to totally suppress stimulation, just little half C's can sometimes help and make a difference. So I hope these little suggestions are helpful for you. This next question comes from Mary, age 40, from Montreal, Canada. Hi, Dr. Aimee, I'm 40, and after 6 failed IUIs, at 39, I decided to do IVF. I had a great retrieval, and holy smokes, I would say you did. Here we go. 33 eggs, 25 mature, 20 fertilized with ICSI, and I ended up with 7 day 5s and day 6 well-graded embryos. On those 7, 4 came back normal, 1 undetermined, which is an amazing result and way better than I was expecting. That being said, I just had my first FET and it failed. Negative blood test confirmed today. Needless to say, I'm sad and wondering, why not me? I can only see my doctor in 2 weeks, so I'm wondering if you have any advice or any suggestions of what could have happened for a PGS normal embryo not implanting. I have PCOS but no endometriosis. I've had an HSGN biopsy done last year and all came back normal. Any recommendation moving forward before my next FET? Thank you for your humor and wise words. Okay, here's what I do. Number 1, cavity evaluation. If you haven't had a saline infusion sonogram in the last 6 months, do another one now. Number 2, ask your doctor if they would do the ERA test for you. I don't want you to go through another transfer, have it not work, and then have someone talk to you about it. Because by then you would have 2 embryos left, and it sounds like those are the 2 that are still strong, and you know that they are genetically normal. I would hate for you to end up learning when you have 2 left, especially if you want to have 2 kids, that doing that test would have helped. So consider the ERA test. The other thing, the Receptiva DX test. I know you said you don't have endometriosis, but you might have silent endometriosis. I bet the biopsy that they did for you was looking at endometritis, and it sounds like that was negative, so that's a huge thumbs up, but that's something that I would suggest. In a case where you have no access to any of these tests, like you can't do any of these things because they don't, they haven't done them, your doctor doesn't believe in them, or whatever it might be, sometimes the protocol can simply be, and I say simply, it's not so simple, perhaps try 1 month of Lupron. I swear I get some really great transfer results from that protocol in patients with implantation. I like to use the word issues. I hate the word failure. I know you guys know that. Sometimes just taking 1 month of Lupron with letrozole, then go right into your transfer protocol. Maybe that will help. But talk to your doctor about what they know about you. Have they ruled out adenomyosis? It sounds like they have as far as endometriosis, whether they'll do implantation testing for you and another cavity evaluation. And then the other thing that's kind of trendy right now, and I'll just kind of talk about it, is taking a probiotic. So if there's absence of lactobacillus in your microbiome inside the uterus, that might decrease your implantation rate. So if you aren't taking, I need to adjust my momlet hat here. If you aren't taking a probiotic, maybe add that too. Okay, this next question is from Megan. She's 33 years old in New York. Here's what Megan says. Here we go. I went off birth control in 2019 and I didn't get pregnant for 3 months. The cycles remained 50 to 60 days before going on Clomid for 5. I went to my fertility doctor this January for the first time and I was diagnosed with PCOS solely on ultrasound and cycle irregularity. I'm 5'4", 112 pounds. Did my first retrieval on antagonist protocol, 34 eggs retrieved, 24 fertilized, 5 low quality blasts, and none were normal. I was devastated. Trying to better understand if this is due to egg quality or the wrong protocol. My doctor wants to do the same thing a second time, but adding in Clomid, which makes me uncomfortable. Please let me know if you have any suggestions. So here's the thing, Megan. I would say consider a lower dose protocol. Let's not try and get 30 eggs. How about let's consider aiming for about 12 to 15 mature eggs. That feels really comfortable. And I think you can accomplish that by using that same approach that your doctor is thinking of, right? Clomid. However, maybe consider Femera, also known as letrozole, rather than Clomid. And the reason is that letrozole will prevent the rise in your estrogen and Clomid will cause a rise. There's a lot of reasons why doctors feel uncomfortable using Femera, and that's because when you use it, you can't rely on estrogen levels to guide you as far as how the eggs are growing. So you have to rely more on the ovaries. I still check the estrogen levels, and I kind of have a calculation in my head that if you take the estrogen level and multiply it by 4, that's pretty equivalent to what your estrogen level would be, for example, if you were taking Clomid. When you're still on Femera, it usually takes your body about 2 days for the Femera to come out of your system so that you can start to see that estrogen rise. So I don't get all, concerned at all when I check an estrogen level on a femara cycle and the patient's estrogen level is like 12. And I always tell my patients it's not the level, it's the rate of rise over time, especially once your femara is out of your system. So my vote is no birth control pills, add NAD and CoQ10, consider HGH, and I do agree questioning the Clomid makes sense to me. I feel like when women are already going through stuff to make us feel a little bit nutty, whatever we can do to decrease the nuttiness, like maybe not using Clomid, is always good. Your sanity is very important to me. But there are a lot of patients that do really, really well on Clomid, but there are a lot of patients that do not. And I have met a lot of the patients that do not. So when a patient says, I want Clomid, I would say, no. I actually don't say that. I say Clomid is not a medication that I use here because of the bad side effects. However, you would still like to use it? No. Okay, maybe I'm not that mean. Okay, this next question comes from Felicia. Felicia says, hi, I'm from South Carolina. I have secondary infertility. My son is 15. My husband has no sperm issues as I'm on all the supplements you suggest. I had 2 IVFs last year, no pregnancies. All my hormones were great. My uterus is great. I use Lupron. I did 1 cycle of Lupron, once with with Cetrotide. My doctors baffled. They diagnosed me with poor egg quality and a blocked tube. And I was not ready to give up. I went to my very open OB/GYN and I did my own research. After asking you about possible endometriosis, he agreed it may be the problem, even though I don't have any issues. I had the laparoscopy and it was in 6 areas. The tube is not blocked. I'm sad I had it, but glad I listened to you when you said a lot of times it could be the hidden culprit. Not saying it's a guarantee that solves it, but it's a step forward. I'm tearing up as I write. Thank you so much. My question is, do you have any further suggestions for the coming months of trying to conceive? Okay, I do. Here's the deal. Maybe consider another IVF cycle. This would be a great time. You've done the surgery. Maybe it's decreased the amount of inflammation surrounding your sparkling eggs, and maybe this is the perfect time to go into an egg retrieval. It sounds like you're already taking my egg quality supplements, the ones that I always talk about, not that they're mine, but maybe also consider adding NAD if you haven't already. And even though you have a son that's 15 years old, make sure you've done enough genetic testing. Chromosome analysis, carrier screen, I imagine you have, but if not, this is a great time to do it. Also, for your husband's sperm DNA fragmentation test, I know you said he doesn't have any issues, but really check that box. After going through 2 IVF cycles that haven't worked, I really think it makes sense to do that. I know. The doctor said it was egg quality, but let's just make sure 1000% that sperm quality isn't an issue too. If you feel like you've had enough with the IVF and you're just like, not going to do it, that's okay. Consider taking ovulation induction medications to boost the number of eggs that you're going to ovulate each cycle. Combine that with, I call it the Aimee baby. I'm just kidding, but maybe not. I have about 2 to 3 Aimee babies a month. We call that a home insemination this way. So basically, not that you need it, and I don't think you need it. You guys can have sex, and of course you have my permission and blessing to do that always. But if there's issues in the bedroom, which it sounds like there are not, but you can have them do a sample here. You close it up, put it in your bosom, walk around for 15, 20 minutes, just not like that. You could do it like that too. That'd be kind of silly. Put it in your armpit, put it between your legs. You get my point. Then you can draw it up with a syringe. Pretend my pen is a syringe. You draw it up. If you have a needle on there, please take it off. Place in the vagina and push. And there you have a home insemination. So see if you think that would help. I'm not sure that it really will, but what I'm trying to say is be as aggressive as you feel comfortable being with each cycle start. Repeat your FSH, estradiol, AMH. Just kind of get another check-in with your doctor. And then see, maybe by, July, if you guys aren't pregnant naturally or pregnant with, something that I've talked about, maybe reconsider another IVF cycle. So I hope that helps. Okay, this next question comes from Tabitha. She's 29 from Washington, D.C. Dr. Aimee, I love you. Thanks for all that you do. I'm 29, normal 28-day cycles with a week-long period. We've been trying to conceive for 2 years plus. Early on, we were diagnosis. I can speak, I promise. I was diagnosed with MFI, male factor infertility, for my hubby's testicular cancer. After 3 failed IUIs and a very painful FET, I'm starting to think maybe my fertility has been overlooked. I know I have a curved cervix because my IUIs were always difficult and took longer than usual. My FET was with a different doctor and I was blindsided. The procedure took 3 times as long and had me in tears. They had me pee midway through by a cup, and the embryologist took my embryo back and forth at least twice. The catheter just wouldn't go through. I know this isn't normal. I'm looking for answers. The doctor kept saying there was a lot of inflammation or scar tissue. News to me. The FET failed. Our embryo was hatching and PGT tested. What test should I explore next to make my FET less painful or successful? What causes a curved cervix? Not sure if this is helpful or not, but after my initial question, I did have a hysteroscopy where they found at least 2 polyps and a bunch of scar tissue, reasons unknown. Any advice for a less painful FET is appreciated. Tabitha, one word. Actually, that's not a word. Anesthesia. Yes. Just like you would have during an egg retrieval, do your transfer under anesthesia. Your doctor can fill your bladder. Your uterus can lean back like a lawn chair. While you're asleep, they'll put the speculum in and they'll place that catheter, and voila, you will have a gorgeous embryo transfer. You might want to practice though under anesthesia, maybe at the start of your period, just to make sure that there will be no issues, that they don't need to dilate again. It sounds like they were able to remove scar tissue, but you want to make 1,000% sure. So they can either like do a quick mock in the office before you start estrogen, or you can do a hysteroscopy at the beginning of the cycle. So that's kind of what I would do. Anesthesia, do your transfer asleep. As far as, are we missing anything? I don't know why there would be the scar tissue inside your cervix. I'm not sure if they're using the word scar tissue when they really mean it's stenotic or closed, and that could just be because you haven't had a vaginal delivery yet. And polyps in the cervix, they're not uncommon, and I'm glad that they found their home in a jar. So I hope this is helpful for you. And, I really like my uteri, to be leaned back like a lawn chair. I like my patients to be on Valium. I like to make sure that I can get in before the transfer day so that what you experience doesn't happen. So I would suggest that the doctor who's been able to get into your uterus the most, pick them to do your transfer under anesthesia, and I really hope that this next transfer is successful for you. Okay, this next question is from Beth. Beth is 39 years old from Baltimore, Maryland. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Thank you for taking the time to answer my question. After a year of trying, without success, my husband and I began fertility treatment last month. I'm 39. I'm not overweight. My tubes are open. My hormone levels are within normal ranges. My husband is 38 years old and his sperm was normal. My doctor put me on Clomid 100 milligrams from days 3 through 7. My day 12 ultrasound revealed my lining was 4 millimeters and they instructed me to take estrase 2 milligrams ASAP. The following day, my lining was 5 and I had 7 follicles, a 28 millimeter, an 18 millimeter, 14 on the right, and a 14, 13, 11, and 10 on the left. Unfortunately, we couldn't move forward with the IUI due to a death in the family. Should we attempt to do another IUI with Clomid, or should we move forward with IVF? And what can I do next month to thicken my lining and produce more follicles? Okay, Beth, here's the deal. Your follicle count was amazing. Your response to Clomid, just fantastic. The issue is Clomid can thin out your lining. It can be an anti-fertility pill, and you just didn't know that. Reason number 3,552 why I don't use Clomid, because that's what it can do. It can thin out your lining. And guess what? That doesn't help you get pregnant. It actually is the opposite. It prevents pregnancy. Yes. So I would suggest, if you still want to do a fertility pill IUI cycle, because it sounds like that opportunity was taken away from you because of all the circumstances at that time, use Femera and see if that will help. I have very rarely also seen thin lining with Femera, but it's very, very rare. Remember my 3 questions. What do you want? What is it going to take? Are you willing to do it? How many kids do you want, right? So if you want 2 kids, IVF is the way to go so you can preserve your fertility, bank embryos for the future. I always think about my patient's age at the time that they would want their second kid and what their fertility levels would be at that time, and then guide treatment based on that. I know, it sounds like a lot. I mean, by the time you come to me, you're like, I'd be so happy to just have 1 kid, Aimee. Like, don't ask me that question. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I've been around here for almost 14 years. I'm not 14 years old. I mean, I've probably been doing this for 45 years because when I came out of my mother's womb, I probably was like asking everyone in the room, does anyone want to get pregnant here? It's probably a true story. But my point is, I don't want you to miss an opportunity to freeze and preserve your healthy eggs by making embryos now for the future. So if that's something that's acceptable for you, do it. If not, if you're like, no, thank you, I'm not going to do it, then go into your treatment with your eyes wide open, knowing what your success rates are. The likelihood of success at 39 with ovulation induction and IUI is probably at best maybe 8 to 10%. So that means 90% of the time it will not work. I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm not at all. But I think when you pick a treatment, you have to know why you're doing the treatment, what's the diagnosis, what's the prognosis, and how is it going to help you with your fertility roadmap. And that's your fertility, do some fertility forecasting. I had to take economics classes when I was doing my master's in public health. And anytime I heard of forecasting, I was like, oh God, I can't do that. That's just so hard. But I do it every day as a fertility doctor. I forecast. I can't do it as an economist, but I can forecast someone's fertility because it's just not rocket science. It's just a matter of your FSH, estradiol, AMH, your age, your goals, and then you can kind of forecast for a patient what the future might look like for them so that they feel really informed about how things should look or will look. Okay, this next question comes from Anne. Anne is 35 years old from New Hampshire, and here's her question. I'm 35, I've been trying to conceive for 3 years, and I've had five early miscarriages, 3 chemicals, 2 empty 5-week sacs discovered at 7 weeks. All my RPL tests, negative, normal. My husband's sperm is high with high count, really normal. We previously did 3 rounds of Clomid this fall. During my baseline scans, during the Clomid rounds, I had 8 follicles and then 4 with a big cyst. At my baseline scan for IVF this week, a different doctor at the practice told me they only saw 5 antral follicles and he believes I have diminished ovarian reserve. This is a shock to us, as we were expecting implantation issues, not ovarian reserve issues. I've been on egg quality supplements for over a year, and I'm starting an IVF protocol this week, 300 gonal, 300 Menopur. Does the follicle count change from month to month? Any advice on how to increase our chances? Thank you. Okay, Anne, I'm sure you've already done this already. It sounds like you're very well informed, but make sure you've also done enough genetic testing. Chromosome analysis, carrier screen. Okay? Number 2, if your follicle count has really drastically changed the next time you go in, I'm not sure what the outcome of your cycle was. Think autoimmune. So maybe consider testing some autoimmune stuff to see if you need treatment for something before you even transfer, for example. The follicle count just does change month to month. And if you think of sitting at a beach, and I'm just lounging here with what kind of drink am I drinking? My Mai Tai. Let's say I'm sitting here with my Mai Tai, and I'm looking out at the beach from the shore. You can see that the wave sizes are a little bit different as they come in. My point. I'll get there. I promise. My point is that, yes, the follicle counts can change just like the sizes of waves. They don't change a ton. However, I have seen situations where you're like 8, 8, 18, and you're like, wow, thank goodness I was sitting here waiting at the beach for this wave. I'm going to ride this. Let me get my board. And I'm just like, let me get my life jacket. Or actually, let me get the life jackets to throw out to all the swimmers out there. But my point is this. You can wait for a cycle and see what happens. Track and trend your follicle counts, your hormone levels, and then decide when it's a good cycle for you. So if during your baseline at your Clomid rounds you had 8 follicles, and then you're ready for IVF and there's 5, you would say, I'm going to sit this one out and I'm just going to make sandcastles at the beach, right? And I'm going to wait and look, and next time I'm just going to enjoy my life and maybe just have a little bit of the Mai Tai, not too much of it, as you're waiting for that next wave. That's kind of what I would do in a case like yours. As far as increasing your chances, talk to your doctor about HGH priming. Look at your lifestyle, see what you can do to make it healthier. Look at your sleep patterns, how much water you're drinking, the foods you're eating, the plastics that are in the environment for both you and your husband. And that's what I would do. And try not to allow this process to take away your joy, right? There's a sign at my front desk. You guys probably don't know this unless you've been watching this show a lot. Or if you're my patient, there's actually a sign at the front that says, find joy in the journey. And I know you're going to roll your eyes because you're like, that's a bunch of crap, because there ain't anything joyful about this journey. And the thing is, we have to actively make it joyful as much as we can, because life is too darn short to be miserable as you're going through a process that, believe me, is very effed up. And the reason why I say that is because I work so hard each and every day for my patients, and when I deal with human biology, nothing is 100%. So I have patients that have successful cycles, and I have patients that don't. But I know that when a patient doesn't have a successful cycle, it's not because we missed something. It's not because we could have done something better. We did everything that we possibly could in our control to give ourselves the best chance. And that gives us comfort. But it still sucks. Don't get me wrong. Okay, this next question comes from Miriam. She's 37 from Iran. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Thank you for answering my previous question. I'm now diagnosed with mild to moderate adenomyosis and no endometriosis visible. The uterus volume is 150% and enlarged. Could adenomyosis be the cause for my second trimester loss? The pathology report suggested that the baby was normal, my placenta was abnormal. I also had a placental abruption with my son born at 37 weeks by an emergency C-section. My OB thinks that something in my body is causing placental insufficiency, but unable to find out what. My blood results for clotting factor was normal. Could treating the adeno with medications and shrinking the uterus improve the odds of a live birth? What medication do you normally recommend and for how long? Thank you. So Miriam, yes, I think the answer to your problem is probably adenomyosis. You have reports that suggest it. I think you can treat it. The other thing is sometimes endometriosis goes with adenomyosis, so it's possible that endometriosis at 37 could be causing some egg quality issues more so than what I'm just saying is that if you have other symptoms and there's any signs of endometriosis, maybe treating it through laparoscopy could potentially help with adeno. I'm not sure in your case, but ask your doctor that question. But if you were my patient, I would say let's get a baseline size, which it sounds like you have, and maybe consider 2 to 3 months of Depo Lupron, and then check the size of your uterus with each passing month and just kind of see what we think and see if we're ready to go. When I say ready to go, I mean ready for an embryo transfer. Because of your age, I would suggest embryos first, then treatment for adeno, because treatment for adeno might take 3 to 6 months. And that amount of time might take away from your fertility because at 37, I consider you a young, healthy, fertile woman. But if you wait 6 months, then it might be harder to get pregnant with a healthy egg. You know what I say? It's hard to find a good egg, especially when you have endometriosis. So in a case like yours, maybe consider doing IVF, treatment for adenomyosis, then transfer, and hopefully you will have a successful transfer after treatment. This next question comes from Andy. Hi, thank you for all you do. I'm 38 from Washington, D.C., and my husband is 33, and we're trying for our first child. I got pregnant our first try in September, but I had a miscarriage at 8 weeks. The embryo was 7 weeks along. I went on to get pregnant again in December, but had a biochemical pregnancy after the miscarriage in October. I went in for a full workup. My fertility levels looked good. AMH 2.4, FSH, follicle count 22. My doctor found a uterine polyp, which ended up actually being 3 polyps, with the largest being 7 millimeters. During my hysteroscopy to remove those, she also found some lumpy, bumpy areas in my uterus, which she also removed. My question is, what is the likelihood that my miscarriage and biochemical pregnancy were caused by the polyps? At what point should we consider IVF? I keep reading that uterine anomalies are one of the causes for RPL, which is also known as recurrent pregnancy loss, but I have also read and was told by my RD that we can't know for sure. Can you say more? What would you recommend? So Andy, I totally agree with your OBGYN or your fertility doctor. This is the thing. Polyps are pretty common. Miscarriages are pretty common. But just because you have a polyp doesn't mean it'll cause a miscarriage. And just because you had a miscarriage doesn't mean that it's possibly always from a polyp. Whenever I have a patient who's had a miscarriage, the first thing that I want to do is I want to know what are the genetics of that pregnancy. Over 50% of the time, they're going to be genetically abnormal. I agree with your doctor in what they're saying, but I would say, let's look at this. Have we ruled out adenomyosis? When you looked at the pathology report, is it possible that any of the polyps showed any areas of adenomyosis? I've seen that before. Have you ruled out a uterine septum? It sounds like you have. Have you ruled out autoimmune issue? It sounds like you have. You did a check for lupus anticoagulant, beta-2 glycoprotein 1, and the antiphospholipid antibodies. Anticardiolipin is what I meant to say. Have you looked at sperm genetics, doing the sperm DNA fragmentation test? Have you done a chromosome analysis for both of you? Have you done a carrier screen looking at also thrombophilias, like an increased predisposition to blood clots? So those are the kinds of things that I would be thinking about in a case like yours. And the answer is yes, I would consider IVF. And you know why? It's because I want you to have at least 2 kids. And at 38, I was going to rhyme with 38 and say, like, I don't want it to be too late, but that sounds just silly. But what I would say is this is the perfect time, given you're really high, right? You said 22 follicles, holy smokes, to preserve embryos for your future. There's no better time than now. The time to do IVF isn't at the age of 40 after you have your first live birth now. Well, of course you can do it. But the fact that you're seeing a fertility doctor already, I would say freeze eggs, freeze embryos, right? It's always nice to have embryos on ice for baby number 2 in the future. So that's what I would have you consider doing if that's acceptable to you. If not, then I would say it sounds like you're in really good shape to try and get pregnant naturally again. But be careful. What I mean by that is I've had patients that make polyps all the time. I think I had a patient once, I'm trying to think how many times I did a polyp surgery before she finally got pregnant because I kept canceling her transfer and canceling her transfer. And then finally for baby number 2, I was like, oh, you're not going to do this to me again. And she did the exact same thing. I literally would have to start her estrogen, remove a polyp, and then transfer in the same cycle because I would close my eyes and open it and there would be a new polyp. Well, that's just what she does. So this next question comes from Carly. Carly's 36 years old from Tennessee. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I recently started seeing an RE. That stands for reproductive endocrinologist, for those of you guys who don't know what that designation is. I finished my initial cycle of evaluation. My husband and I have been trying to conceive our first child for 1 year. I'm 36 and he's 34. Okay. We were able to conceive naturally last September, but then miscarried at 6 weeks. I'm sorry. Since the miscarriage, my cycles are shortening to 24 to 26 days. They used to be 27 to 28. I've suspected that I'm ovulating too early based on my hormone LH test. Peak day happening day 8 through 10. My AMH is 1.34, FSH is 5, LH is 6.7, estradiol 69. My day 10 ultrasound showed a 12 millimeter follicle, but then I got a positive LH peak later that afternoon. My progesterone next day was 5.7. My fertility doctor is prescribing letrozole for the next cycle to start on day 1. What's the difference between starting letrozole on day 1 versus day 3? Thanks for your help and guidance. I wish I'd known about you in my 20s so I could have frozen my eggs. Okay, here's the thing. Carly, you're 36 years old with good ovarian reserve tests. Why not go right to IVF? That's what I would have you consider doing. Go through all the things that I talked about with the last follower's question. Basically, I went through angelmethod.com, so look that up if you haven't had a chance to yet. Ask your doctor to go through all those tests and make sure you haven't missed any possible diagnosis that you could treat to prevent another miscarriage. Really important to me. And rather than using letrozole, I would consider freezing embryos. It is not too late. You're saying, I wish I had known about you in my 20s so I could have frozen my eggs. Do it now. It is not too late to freeze your embryos now. So starting letrozole day 1 versus day 3 versus day 4 or 5, the earlier you start, the higher the chance that you'll recruit more than one egg. I like to start by day 3, day 1, day 2, day 3. I don't really think there's that big of a difference. So I think you can do that. But I would also talk to your doctor about whether it makes sense to do IVF and freeze embryos now. This next question comes from Ashley, age 30, from Israel. Hi, Dr. Aimee. My husband has a pretty intense varicocele. But 3 years ago, I conceived our daughter on our second round of letrozole and timed intercourse, so we didn't think it would be a problem. This time around, we tried injectables and timed intercourse for 7 months, one IUI that showed very little sperm. You guys, that's why I'm always telling you guys, it's always nice to have sperm on ice. So if you're fertility treatment out there and you guys get pregnant, freeze that sperm for baby number 2 so that you don't wish that you had. Okay. One IUI that showed very little sperm and 1 round of IVF that resulted in 3 frozen blasts. I miscarried the first at 5 weeks and the second transfer didn't work. My husband is about to undergo the embolization procedure. Do you think it's worth transferring the 3rd embryo since his DNA fragmentation from the varicoceles would probably cause the miscarriage? How could I have such a beautiful day 5 blast if his DNA was so bad? How long would you recommend waiting after the embolization to do another round of IVF? I really don't want to have to wait 6 whole months when we have already been trying for a year. Thanks. Okay, Ashley, here's the deal. So if the DNA fragmentation is high, it is associated with higher chromosomal abnormalities in embryos. If the embryo is beautiful, we just don't know if it's genetically normal until you actually test it or transfer it and then find out. Even if his DNA fragmentation is high, there's still a good chance. So when I say good, there's still a good chance, there's still a decent chance that it would be worth it to still transfer it. With this next cycle though, you could use this little chip here, this little device. This is what I use. It's called the Hbot. I use it in a lot of my cases, especially when there's DNA fragmentation, as it has been shown because I've shown it. And what I mean by that is I have done DNA fragmentation tests before we put the sperm in here, and then a DNA fragmentation after, and then compare the DNA results. I'm trying to indicate with my fingers what I'm trying to say here, and have found that the DNA fragmentation test results drop significantly with this little piece of plastic. So it's kind of a cool little thing there that I think could be helpful. You might want to talk to your doctor if they can add that to your next cycle rather than having him go through the varicocele procedure. However, we want to make sure that he has enough sperm first. So if he has very little sperm, maybe don't do it. But what you could do is have him do the varicocele, then do IUIs with this little chippy doodle thingy. I'm trying to make something up here, and that didn't really work out the way that I expected it to, but that's okay. Um, anyways, I digress. I was just thinking right now of something very, very funny that I said today, but I can't repeat it here. Okay. Next question is from Melissa, 36 from Florida. Hi, doctor. I had 3 losses at 5.5 weeks and I got pregnant fast. I have uterine fibroids removed December 2019, and since then, no pregnancy. Last month, I got another saline sonogram, and my uterus looks good. Tubes open. I ovulate, regulate periods. AMH 5, TSH 1, estradiol 33, progesterone 13, husband morphology 2%, motility 28, quantity good. I've been trying to conceive for 8 months and no pregnancy. My doctor wants to do IVF. Can I do something else? Is the sperm causing the issue? Is there another test that will tell me that my uterus wall is good? We take CoQ10, NAC, vitamin D, and a multivitamin. Thank you. Okay, here's the deal. Go to Ball's method, right? Look at all that stuff about your husband's sperm, including background genetics, which for me is a sperm DNA fragmentation test, so look at that. Have your husband see a urologist to rule out a varicocele. Look at his testosterone levels, look at his lifestyle, make sure he's not smoking anything, drinking too much of anything, and eating too much pizza. No pizza and beer for him. I'm just kidding. So I feel like we need to take sperm more seriously and say that it absolutely could be the issue, and we need to do enough genetic screening on both of you. You had the uterine fibroids, maybe do a hysteroscopy and look inside the uterus and see if there's any scar tissue from that hysteroscopy procedure. Saline sonograms can define things, but when you've been through as much as you've been through before you guys get pregnant again or do your transfer after IVF, I would say do a really careful look, or at least ask your doctor if it makes sense for you to do a hysteroscopy too. Even though your saline sonogram was done and everything looked good, maybe do that as well. But I feel like sperm could be an issue. I don't blame sperm just based on one snapshot. Practice makes perfect. Collecting a cup, kind of awkward. I totally get it. But I would suggest maybe doing a repeat semen analysis, sperm DNA fragmentation test, go through my Balls method, go through my Angel method, make sure you've done all of those tests, consider IVF with PGTA to hopefully prevent the transfer of an embryo that could be genetically abnormal that could give you a higher risk of a miscarriage. You're taking all the right supplements, and I wish you all the best. This last question, you guys, comes from Chelsea. She's 31 from Texas. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm 31 and my husband and I have been trying to conceive for 2 years. We recently had many tests done, including my HSG, and found out that my right tube is blocked. I was told that it could be blocked at the end of my ovary and causing a fluid to leak into my uterus, preventing any pregnancy. You guys, that is called a hydrosalpinx. I will be having a laparoscopy done and possibly having my right tube tied off. Could you please shed some light on a hydrosalpinx? I think that's what it's called, and the chances of conceiving naturally if my right tube is tied off. Okay, Chelsea, here's the deal. It's really hard to go into surgery knowing that the doctor's going to block your tube if you don't have embryos waiting for you. Here's my strategy. Step 1, you know your diagnosis is a hydrosalpinx. It is very possible that the other tube is also blocked. You don't want to wake up after laparoscopy realizing that both tubes are blocked. Then, after IVF, then go and do the laparoscopy, because then you have something to wake up to. You're going to be so happy that you're going to have something to look forward to rather than being like, oh my God, they just sterilized me. And that's literally what they're doing. So first of all, you don't need your fallopian tubes to get pregnant through IVF. You really don't. This kind of stuff is actually super, super common. This is what IVF was invented for. The other thing is that I wouldn't just tie off your tube. I would actually physically remove it. Inflammation of the tube is a risk factor for ovarian cancer later. I don't think people realize that, but it's a known thing amongst fertility doctors and OBGYNs like me. So I wouldn't just clip it or tie it. I would actually surgically remove the whole tube because I don't want it to cause any issues later. So your chances of conceiving naturally, if they just remove that right tube, assuming that left tube is awesome and amazing, is actually really good. Assuming you have good sperm and great ovarian reserve tests. So look at your FSH, estradiol, AMH, semen analysis, chromosome analysis, carrier screen. Make sure that there's no other reason for you guys to do IVF. And if you would like, just remove that one dilated tube, put it in a jar, close it up, and throw it away. And see if you can get pregnant from the other side. Realizing that you don't ovulate right, left, right, left, right, left. I don't know if I did that right. Right, left, right, left. It's kind of like a flip of a coin. But you might want to consider ovulation, boosting drugs to help you ovulate maybe more than one egg. So hopefully one will be on your open side. So great question. This is something that I deal with all the time with people because it is such a common problem. You guys, I've been doing Ask the Egg Whisperer show for an hour now. I love you guys. Thank you for joining me today. Like I said, my first egg retrieval was at 6 in the morning. The patient who I did the retrieval on can attest to that. I still have patients to follow up with. My retrieval tomorrow morning is at 6:45. I think you can put suitcases in these bags. So I'm going to have to get my rest so I can wake up tomorrow after doing my egg retrieving exercises. I do have a regimen and a routine every single time, including my 3 pairs of lucky socks. Ask me if you're my patient. I'll show them to you. So I hope you guys have a great, great night. Thank you for joining me on Ask the Egg Whisperer. Thank you for doing all you're doing to bring more love into this world, because you guys are going to all make incredible parents, whether you're a parent already or you want to be a parent to another baby. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. The world needs more people just like you. Okay? Love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.